Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tai Chi web show. I'm Dane Dormio. I am really pleased and excited to be having and sharing this conversation this evening with Qigong poet Anthony Guilbert. Anthony is a poet, professor, publisher, martial artist, and mindfulness advocate. He's the author of 5 books on mind body arts, sustainability, and human potential, and a certified teacher of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi. So, uh, I, um, I don't know if I'm the only kind of nerd that gets really excited uh, just hearing that. I'm really excited to dig into everything you're about. So, Anthony, thanks for being
My pleasure, Dane. My pleasure.
here. And starting with your origin story, I'd like to hear about
My origin story.
how you got started on this path.
Like most men in my generation, I was back in the '70s watching, Shaw Brothers martial arts films, and for me, it was the movie Billy Jack. We when I was probably about 12 years old, no, probably about 10 years old, a group of us snuck into the local theater to see the show because it was R-rated. Some woman took her top off, and and I was just blown away not only with the martial arts, but the code of the warrior that was exemplified in Billy Jack. And from there, I studied a little bit of karate here and there. There weren't a lot of very reputable teachers where I was growing up, and I had the I guess karmic gift that when my mother remarried, my stepfather was a black belt in Kodokan Judo and had trained with the Grand Master during the late 40s, early 50s in Manhattan, George Yoshida, and then went to the Korean War because he was from Scotland. He went to the Korean War to become a U.S. citizen and ended up staying in Japan and training the Japanese police force during the occupation. And a very interesting story where he had to best the Japanese teacher that was in the police force to get the job. And he did because he had been studying with the Grand Master. And so my dad instilled in me this sense of, a real Japanese approach to the martial arts, and such that I was not just a warrior, but I was also encouraged to pursue the other Japanese arts along the way. So, I started doing haiku when I was younger. Becoming a poet and a writer was not foreign to the concept of the way he saw, the whole spectrum of what the warrior gentleman was like, in Japanese culture. So from there, I went on to study Aikido in New York with 3 different teachers. And then I got into a car accident about the age of 26. And after the car accident, I really couldn't go back to Aikido because I had done some major damage to my lower back, and getting slammed on my back over and over and over again, or trying to articulate a fall the correct way was not possible with the way the muscles of my back were working at that time. So my acupuncturist suggested Tai Chi. And I started with Yang Tai Chi and doing some Qigong in that. I became good friends with Master Chen up at the Dow House here in Colorado when he lived back in New York. And I studied with him for a bit. I went on to study Wu style Tai Chi. I got more into Qigong. I ran into Roger Yanka actually running an event for Master Chen, and Roger is the director for the Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi in California. And Roger kind of hooked me in this sense of I've been moving away from the martial arts aspect of it, but I hadn't really been thinking about Qigong as something, or Tai Chi even, as something I would teach. They were more personal practices. And Roger hooked me with this statement. He goes, 70% of disease can be prevented. Why don't we prevent it? And we had such a great time at lunch during that event that we just kind of became friends. And I went on to train with Roger when I got out to Colorado. I've also trained with Jim McRitchie for a while, who's the founder of the NQA. And that's pretty much the origin story up till, I'd say my 40s. And then the rest of it's just been, the last 15 years has been time spent cultivating those arts and deepening my perception of them.
And this of course is only is at most half the story, because you also have a secret identity as an alternate identity as a publisher, writer, poet. So I'm curious how this is intermeshed with your pursuit of martial arts, the writer's life, and what you've done in that arena.
Well, I think the writer's life. Now, early on, I did compete. I competed in both judo early in my teens, my early 20s, in judo competitions, and then went on to compete as I diversified my martial arts training a bit in open sparring in Manhattan. The kind of Chinatown stuff that everybody hears about. And I think that discipline of getting knocked down and coming back, and the sense of perseverance that one has to have in order to become a good martial. I would never say I was great, but I would say at that one point I might have been good. To be a good martial artist, you need perseverance. And to be a good writer, you need perseverance. You have to constantly push your successes. There's a lot of failures as a writer. Nobody gets, I literally have boxes of rejection letters from decades of doing this. It's perseverance, it's grit, and you need grit for both of those pursuits. And I think one just kind of prepared me for the other, even though they were both kind of happening simultaneously.
Yeah, so I'm particularly interested in the benefits of Qigong and mind-body practices for ordinary people, and benefits for ordinary people leading ordinary lives.
Okay, well, I can speak to that. Let's talk about that. I am, and for most of my life, until I didn't know what it was until I was probably about 19 when they diagnosed me. I'm dyslexic, profoundly dyslexic. And through the practice of martial arts, in the sense of training my body, learning patience, learning to slow down, and then very traditional Zen Buddhist meditation, Zazen meditation, I have over the years learned to correct for my own inability. All I needed was a doctor to explain it to me. And then when he said, okay, you need to slow down, I'm like, well, okay, meditation. So I used meditation particularly or mindfulness. We didn't call it, that back in the 70s and 80s. I used those techniques that I learned in the dojo to slow myself down so that I would not miss letters. And for me, it showed up a lot with numbers. And you can imagine back when we used to all do our checkbooks by hand, how inverting, 1965 into 1695, by inverting those middle two numbers, I never knew how much money was in my checking account. And that was probably, the worst aspect of it is when you're young and you start bouncing checks and stuff like that. So I was able to use the abilities I gained as a martial artist and as a meditator to make a correction for a genetic error. For the most part, Qigong, I think, is my art of preference these days. And I do teach it as a mindfulness practice, as a practice that will help you reduce stress, become more connected with your body. I think for me, it also sparks creativity, being still and being able to see all of the elements at play in a situation, and maybe reorganize some of the elements that other people aren't looking at because they're in the periphery of a situation, is a form of creativity. I do that a lot in business. I do that a lot in education. At any given time when I walk into a classroom, I am dealing with maybe 25 plausible ways in which to create the lesson for the day. A lot of a lot of how I do that comes from what the students are giving me, and being very perceptive allows me to see the students in a different light than other teachers would. You're just more aware of what a student needs, and then you give it to them, So I think for me, that's one of the ways in which I think people can really benefit from mindfulness, particularly. There's a whole, anyone can Google the science behind Qigong. I've never quite understood. Yoga has much more of the market share in terms of mind-body arts, but Qigong is studied probably 3 to 4 times more than yoga has ever been studied. And there's an element there where you can easily access all of the health benefits, the cardiovascular benefits, the benefits for, especially during the time of COVID, the ability to expand and open your lungs, through practice and keep them open and healthy during an event. I thought back in August, in April, right after we closed down the college where I teach, I felt like I was coming down with something. And for about a week, I think it was about 12 days, I felt really like crap. And I was making sure that I was doing very specific exercises to keep my lungs open during that time, on the off chance that I did have the virus and not, a cold or a flu. I didn't get anything that bad. So I think, all of the medical aspects of Qigong and Tai Chi are out there. There's been significant studies done. I'm more these days concerned with the mindfulness elements, the ability to keep oneself calm, especially in a time of heightened stress. And then the benefits that come from being able to thrive in almost any situation. For me, mindfulness and wellness arts are not fads or things that we do because they're popular. They literally are, centuries old practices that allow humanity to thrive. And I support anybody who gets involved in them. I think it's a practice that has changed the focus and direction of my life.
Yeah, that really hits home for me what you said about age-old practice that humanity needs to thrive, because it's what one thing you can say about the pandemic situation is it kind of doesn't change anything in the sense other than the stuff that everybody, that we all knew was important, like keeping your stress down, maintaining your health, wellness. Mm-hmm. It's all just more important now.
Yes.
It's like, it's nothing different. It's just everything that we already knew was important is just more important now. And
so, go ahead.
Looked at through a symptomology kind of perspective. I look at it as a big part of my mission on the planet is to help more people establish for themselves a personal daily mind-body energetic hygiene practice, because I believe this is what human beings actually need to thrive, just like we need sleep and micronutrients and food and water and sunlight and everything. And so I love what you said, Roger said, 70% of disease is preventable. Why aren't we preventing it? Yeah, obviously this is just as if people were deficient on vitamins or sleep, like people aren't getting their mind-body practices. And of course there's going to be symptoms and issues manifesting, if that's the case. So let's get that covered, let's get that taken care of, and then deal with whatever problems are left over after that.
Well, mind-body is a lifestyle. We look at it as, it is a massive industry at this point. Wellness and mindfulness together are $4.2 trillion. It's something I'm researching right now. The industry is so huge, but again, if you have to do it, it has to be part of your lifestyle. It's like the people who go after keto or or the paleo diet. This is a lifestyle choice to get up. My day starts at, between 4:30 and 5 o'clock every morning. I get up. It's, average day is 30 minutes of Tai Chi Qigong, 30 minutes of meditation, 2-mile walk, and I start my day. And I've been doing that, 5 days a week for decades, in various versions of whatever I happen to be, into practicing at that time. But it is very much a lifestyle, and it's one that pays off. It's one that I believe. One of the things I'm looking at now is how we can get this into schools, because I think it is something that should be part, and not as an extracurricular thing. It should be part of like health class. Mind, body, the science behind mind, body, and wellness and mindfulness should be part of your health class. It should. And if somebody's out there listening, you do that. Somebody go do that. I got too many ideas to get to all of them in one lifetime, but I'm throwing it out there. Go connect with a high school and, do this. Okay.
Yeah. If there's something that everybody learns, it should be this, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are really awesome headways into. I really think mind-body practices could revolutionize so many areas, such as not only education, health and healthcare, obviously, but how about prisons? How about the police and military? How about veterans? How about the homeless population?
Well, I know that mind-body is being used extensively for veterans in the VA. I've seen the research on that. The elderly are picking it up, clearly for falls prevention and for, controlling blood pressure, issues like that. I think younger people, for me, I see a lot of usage of these arts among baby boomers and Gen Xers, but we need to start folding in more millennials and folding in more Gen Zers and, meeting them wherever they're at and getting them involved in this, because let's face it, the future of humanity is if COVID has shown us anything, it's going to be novel. There's going to be some new stuff coming. And, as a species, one of our strengths has always been the fact that we are very, very agile. We are not agile in the sense we can move quick. Clearly a lion has us on top of that. But, we're agile in terms of our adaptability. We can adapt quickly. If we have the mindset to survive, we will adapt and thrive. For me, one of the major strategic things we can do is mindfulness. Just make your mind more pliable so that you can deal with, anything that comes up. I've been treating COVID like a new landscape, really. I'm not looking at it as something that's being done to me. I'm looking at it as, okay, the world is changing in front of me and I have to negotiate this landscape, and what's the best way I can negotiate it in order to allow me to thrive?
Yeah, it's really a matter of the younger the better. The younger people get started, and the more young people get started, and it's kind of an irony, maybe. Tai Chi and Qigong, particularly, I've been seeing as things that old people do. Most people think of when they hear of Tai Chi, they think of old people in the park early in the morning, moving slowly in pajamas.
Yeah,
and the fact is, it's really great for older people, and there are people who start in their 40s and then they become master teachers in their 70s,
yes.
after decades of experience, and that's a great thing about these kind of practices. But what's also great about them is you can start at any age. As young as kids can get started, and the benefits accrue. And it's kind of, I guess the irony is what I've observed with kids in general, particularly kids in China. Of course, in China there was a long tradition of these practices being passed down. A lot of people have memories of their grandparents teaching them qigong when they were kids, and that's a rich tradition there. But the kids in China now, from my experience teaching high school there, they're interested in other things, and if they know about what pretty much all they know about qigong is all that stuff old people do, and
Yeah.
and they're interested. But the more the younger people start, the more the benefits, and that's the such a great thing about qigong is that has such a broad range of applicability. From for people recovering from illness or injury or rehabilitating, or if
Yes.
you're already an athlete or a high performer, you know.
Well, particularly if you're an athlete or a high, somebody who's putting out, a performer or somebody who's putting out a tremendous amount of energy, these practices particularly will allow you to recover faster. And recovery is the big thing in among any athletic performance. I remember when I used to go and compete and I would see these guys doing Qigong, and I didn't know what it was back then. It was like, okay, that's some sort of Tai Chi thing, what are these Kung Fu guys doing with that? But their recovery time between bouts, between fights was much quicker than mine, just wasn't something I was exposed to back in the early 80s. I probably did not get exposed to Qigong until I want to say 94, which I was well into I was 27 then. So yeah, well into my, my training at that point. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how to explain to younger people if there's I don't even know if anybody's listening to this. I don't see anything on my side that says, I hope you do. But
yeah, we actually have 5. It shows we have 5 live viewers right now.
5. Okay. Hey, everybody. Texting questions if you have any.
Yeah, we can see your comments if you put comments on this video.
Okay. I think for younger people particularly, if you get involved in this now, I mean, let's. I'm an educator, so let's take a sound look at the world ahead of you. We're going to have increased stress. We're going to have increased political stress, increased health stresses, increased environmental stresses. This is a way, mind, body. I don't care if you do Tai Chi, you do Qigong, you do yoga, or you just get into meditation. One of these will fit your lifestyle. Find the one that works for you. Invest in it. You'll notice a difference 6 months in. You start to go, wow, I would have acted differently in this situation. The more you become aware, the more you start to change the trajectory of your life. And you can start to negotiate these things that we know are coming with greater ease. And if you can do that, you'll end up being more, what's the word I'm looking for? You'll thrive better in the future. Yeah, let's stay with that word. And we got Neil. Neil Stickle just popped in and said hello. Hey, Neil. Neil was actually in my, I think my second year of teaching college back in Long Island. He was one of my students.
Great, thanks for being here, Neil. Yeah, I'm curious how how the idea of human potential ties in with the idea of sustainability. How are sustainability and potential related?
Let's take a look at. I would say my take on that, and I'm probably not an authority in either one of those. But I think that from my experiences, sustainability being that idea of taking care of the planet, making sure our resources are protected. These are all external ideas of things that in the mind-body practices we do internally. We conserve energy. We learn to cycle and cultivate our internal energies, our qi. We learn to stay calmer, We learn to, especially through the martial arts, your movements become very exact. You don't waste a lot of energy. You don't do things that are particularly obtruse or, some forms of Kung Fu are very flowery, but we don't waste a lot of energy. And when you learn to cultivate and conserve your own internal energies, it's not much of a jump to go external. to say, this is the way this is the way I should behave in my environment, and start to act in ways that conserve the environment as well, as opposed to being wasteful and consumption based. I think one of the elements that is, speaking about consumption, one of the elements I've always found impressive about my experiences of mind-body practice is that you start to look at yourself as someone, for me particularly, as someone who produces and creates energy. And the energy for me is creative, and it turns into books, and it turns into artwork, and it turns into the way I interact with my family, and it turns into the way I interact with my community. That creativity is something that's always coming out of me. It's not something I'm looking to take and bring into myself. I'm definitely one of those people who, in terms of the idea of chi, I think that we have in us an infinite amount. I don't think we need to take it from anywhere. I know there are certain schools that believe you can absorb chi from the environment. I think physics tells us there's enough in latent energy inside of us that we never have to do that. That's kind of a little vampiric, and maybe you shouldn't be doing those things. But that constant flow of energy coming out of us, where we give to the environment as opposed to taking from it. If we can learn to do that internally, we can learn to do that externally as well.
Yeah, like become a microcosm.
In a way, yeah. Yep.
And as you're talking about that, there's a number of parallels that come to mind, like the conservation in the sense of energy conservation, efficiency, optimization of movement is definitely one element, and that practicing the internal martial arts particularly is becomes second nature, and also noticing flow and stagnation, which are I've heard it put in a really great way, that all environmental problems can be boiled down to either accumulation, i.e., pollution, or deprivation, i.e., removal. So it's basically a matter of when things are either accumulating or being removed without cycling in closed loops. So it really kind of transcends the duality of, are you taking from or giving to your environment? It's a permeable membrane where things are able to move through, and it's a free exchange. So it's a closed loop type interaction, as opposed to
I think, in nature, definitely, ecosystems are, the Earth is a closed loop ecosystem, in a large sense. What I meant by putting out the idea that we can create more than we need to consume, that we don't need to always have this consumption mindset where we're taking, or a deficit-based mindset where we're hoarding. The practice leads me to the experience of give and just keep giving, because that's what we do. It's not about taking, it's about what you put into the world. I had a realization years ago, and it's kind of strange. I mean, trying to think about this. I was thinking about a girlfriend, right? And I started as kind of, a nerd will do. I started realizing that, our eyes are not constructed the same way. So you don't really see me the way I see you, because it's impossible. No two people see the color blue or green exactly the same way. We don't have the same construction. It's not a cloned eye. So every eye perceives differently. So I started thinking about that. And I started to realize that there was literally no way that I could ever really say I understood what a person's love for me was. I could only talk about my experience of it. And I started thinking, well, then I never really know. So it really comes down to, love is what I give to the world, not what I take from it. And that lesson has been or intellectual obsession. I'm not really sure which way I want to go with that. But that has been with me, and I've been contemplating it for decades now, the idea that so much matters on what we put in. not what we take out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that's true to almost everything that we're talking about when we get down to dealing with. Okay, we got. Let's get to Melissa's question in a minute.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, well, maybe it ties in. The idea of what we put into the world matters, you know, and to take responsibility for it and to be conscious and intentful of it. Those are things that come directly out of mindfulness and mind-body practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, I really resonate with your analogy of creativity or energy. I think of creativity as like a well that's continually bubbling up that can never be exhausted, and it's a matter of just removing whatever might be blocking the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an effortless thing that happens by itself. It's not something we have to make happen. Or
well, in five element theory, there's that concept of, you know, 5-element acupuncture and 5-element Chinese medicine, of always restoring proper flow and balance. You know, so I think that's kind of what you're picking up on, that idea that, you know, yes, creativity flows and it's a font, really, you know, an ever-flowing force that comes out of us. But, you know, how we are as physical beings, you know, do we have emotional, psychological, or physical blockages preventing our energy from flowing in the proper way? Does it have the proper flow and balance? Right, volume, flow, and balance is what Mick Ritchie used to teach. And I think, yeah, again, if you're doing mind body arts, yes, that is exactly what you learn internally, and then when you start to externalize that and look for it in the world, you know, it gives you a better sense of how things are moving and flowing around you.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious to hear your answer to Melissa's question. Can you touch upon internal energy impacting others around us, such as a therapist's energy impacting a client?
Well, we have to start off with the idea that, you know, all of us radiate a certain amount of energy, you know, measurably. The heart and the mind, both organs have electromagnetic fields that go anywhere from 3 to 15 feet around us. And that's kind of been proven. So if you accept as a reality that the energy is there, then our intent colors that. You know, if you will, I'm going to use language that people can understand. Our intent informs the quality of the energy. If your intent, like you think of a Qigong healer, placing your hands on somebody, if your intent is to heal them, you know, then you change the focus of the experience. You can use the same energy in a different movement and break somebody's ribs, you know? So I think your intent colors the energy that comes off of you. So I think it's completely reasonable to assume under those circumstances that a therapist's state of mind, emotional state, energetic state would impact their clients, being, you know, now in COVID time, 6 feet away. I would say that that's reasonable to assume. Melissa, do you want to extend that question a bit further? Because I'm not sure. I would say, yes, it does impact the people around you. Same way when I walk into a classroom, my, you know, physical, emotional, and energetic state impacts my students. Are you looking for more of a specific answer that I'm not touching on?
Maybe she'll come back with something, but I'm thinking of a friend of mine who's very high level Tai Chi and mind body practitioner, energy art practitioner and teacher, and I was at one of his workshops where he was describing energy. What is energy? And he said, it's what scientists refer to as body language and nonverbal communication. But you know, when scientists talk about nonverbal communication and body language, they mean energy. They just call it body language and nonverbal communication, because they can't call it energy.
Well,
But
but we know, I mean, okay, so we can get into the argument as to whether or not chi exists or doesn't exist. We have no way particularly, like we have measurements for electromagnetic energy, and we know that the body radiates electromagnetic energy. That much has been proven. We know that the body also radiates light, though it is in a spectrum that is not visible to our eye. So we know that there is energy coming off of the body. I don't think, I mean, I think there are, and again, I'm thinking of a psychologist I know who I had a very similar conversation with, where he said it was all micro expression, you know, that's what transmitted this idea of energy. And I see Melissa's question. I'm going to think about that while I'm finishing this up. I think that we cannot deny some of the science that's out there now. I mean, in the mind body, we have tradition and we have science, and we haven't really resolved the two yet. We've used science to prove the benefit of mind body, but we haven't really used science to fully flush out the mind body experience just yet. So a lot of people are working off of older traditional ideas. For me, some of the research that I've done has shown that there's a belief that quantum energy and quantum waves have a informational depth to them. The idea that there is, if you just see the wave, that there's a dimension to the wave that has packs of energy behind, and packs of information behind it, if you want to look at it that way. So I think it's, you know, I honestly believe that when you walk into a room, and I guess as a way of testing this is simply to blindfold yourself or cover your face and see if the room changes based on your feelings or not. I think we all impact each other, you know, I think in this great big web. So let me get to Melissa's question. Managing personal energy as a therapist and also helping clients who have clear energy blocks. Well, okay. I think as triage, all therapists and doctors should probably, and nurses should probably be doing Tai Chi and Qigong to deal with the stress that you're put under, to keep yourselves healthy and allow you to thrive. For patients who have blockages, I mean, you know, what are our avenues for opening up blockages? I know that there's some energy psychologists out there right now. There's a whole new field opening up of energy psychology. I know very little about it other than I've, you know, bumped into people who have said, you know, I've been to the conference, but I haven't really dug into that. So Melissa, you could dig into that and try to see whether or not there's something in that energy psychology matrix that, you know, can inform your questions in a better way. But so a therapist could remove a blockage, I think, if they were skilled enough as in understanding both energy and psychology. For a patient to relieve their own blockages, they could do Tai Chi and Qigong if they were so minded. Clearest and fastest way to do it is to go see an acupuncturist and let them work on you. I think, you know, if you're dealing with somebody who has certain problems and if they're not motivated, you know, seeing a doctor first might get them like, oh, wow, this energy stuff is real because this guy just stuck me with needles and I feel 100% better. That might be a doorway into energy work.
What comes to mind the way I'm reading those questions is therapists. I mean, as a blanket statement, therapy works with the mind and not so much with the energy body. So if you were, you know, if as a patient, if you had specific energetic blockages, then, you know, you want to see an acupuncturist or someone who specializes in that, which is not to say that the two aren't, you know, maybe complementary, can't be complementary approaches, but
well, if you look at the body, I mean, if you look at your existence, your being as a not something we can take apart, you know, psychology, physiology, you know, energetic body, but it's all one unit. It's all one hologram, you know. The energy informs and creates the hologram, but ultimately, emotions can create physical blockages, you know, and physical blockages can create emotional deficits. So the web there, the great web, is that I think psychologists digging in to a person's psyche and helping them uncover their problems can often find, physical trauma underneath psychological problems. And so I see all of this as, you treat the being, you don't break it apart and say, it's kind of like people who tell me, I have a mundane life and I have a spiritual life. It's like, no, you have a life, you have a being, you are a being, and your being is a composite of many different things, but they don't function separately and are overlaid on top of each other. They're interwoven into each other. So it's almost, I really resist, after all the years that I've been in this, I resist the notion that we should approach anything in a linear format, that energy moves linear throughout the body. A lot of advanced practitioners that I know have stopped talking about, when you feel energy moving, how do you feel it move? Do you feel it move in a line? Do you feel it move through your meridians? Or do you just kind of feel it, diffuse? And a lot of the practitioners that I know that are older, have been doing this shit way longer than I have, come at me with this, I just feel radiance, as if it's one thing, not, my upper tantien and my lower tantien and my, so I think there are many traditions, of course, and we're always going to be fighting everybody's traditional perspective. But I think a lot of this for me has to do with using the arts to tune my senses, to feel exactly where I am so that I can always maintain optimal health, and using whatever techniques I've learned along the way to relieve any problems that I have. So I think, and those problems can be psychological. Those problems can be, we're all living in the same world. We're all impacted by the same external energies. Some of us can navigate them better. Some of us can't. We all do our best. But I think the notion that we can separate out those things I think in the next couple of years, you'll see a lot of people talking about more human body in a truly more holistic sense. I mean, even NASA right now is getting, in some of the science I've seen, NASA is getting into energy medicine because they're recognizing that there are things happening to people when they're in space that really have to do with their bodies being separated from the energetic nature of the planet and what that means for long-term space travel. So nested fields. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. In addition to in addition to the things you already mentioned, there's also the effect of mirror neurons.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know how much of that research you looked into, but Ramachandra has a couple of great TED Talks on them, basically, and he describes it. He's one of the foremost mirror neuron researchers in the world at UCSD. He describes it as if you could look at a group of people under some kind of field scope, you'd see that we're kind of a unified neuroelectric field, and so that's another one of the ways that that the biomedical science is starting to make headway a little bit into the territory of energetics, because mirror neurons are documented to be involved in empathy and emotional contagion, for example.
So when you're talking about mirror neurons, I had heard that term used differently in the past. Are you talking about the idea that we are mirroring each other in a certain way, or mirror neurons within the body?
There are a certain subset, a small subset of all of our neurons, our motor neurons and our sensory neurons, are mirroring the physical and emotional states of others around us. So It was discovered by accident in an Italian lab where they had some electrodes linked up to a monkey's brain for some experiments. So they went out for ice cream and came back, and the researcher was going like this with the ice cream cone, and the monkey was watching, and on the monkey's brain, the motor neurons were firing as if the monkey was also eating ice cream, as if the monkey was also bringing its hand to its mouth. So that was accidentally discovered.
Interesting.
And they modeled if someone stubs their toe, if you see someone stub their toe and it kind of makes you cringe, because you're also feeling that to a certain extent, or if you get around somebody who's in a bad mood and it kind of brings your mood down, that's emotional contagion, or vice versa.
That sounds like that's interesting. I mean, I wonder how that folds into. There was some work done. I want to say at Princeton in their anomalous engineering lab, and then at MIT with Helmut Schmidt, where they have these sensors all across the planet that are not sensors. These basically generators all across the planet that are generating quantum randomness. So they're randomizing zeros and ones. And what they've noticed is that, and then they were looking to see whether or not humanity had any impact on these type of quantum generators. So in other words, something that should be absolutely random, would it stop being random under certain circumstances? And they were kind of measuring the globe, and they first noticed a change right when Princess Diana died. Like a couple hours before that, the whole world started, all the random number generators started spitting out patterns and then stopped. And so they connected that with kind of Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance, that humanity has this collective level that we're all conscious, let's say the collective unconscious, for lack of a better phrase, and that impacts the world around us. And then, Princeton, they did research there where they started noticing same set of information right before 9/11, like within hours before 9/11, there's this big spike of non-randomness showing that, people were perceiving on a quantum level what was about to happen, and it was changing the random number generators around Manhattan. I'm wondering if there's any connection between that, because in some sense, you're talking about non-local fields. If I am...
Well, no, I don't think there's a direct connection. The mirror neuron phenomenon has to do with nervous systems that are perceiving one another. So for example, they're what allow a human to see what another human is doing and copy it. That's why one of Ramachandran's TED Talks is on the neurons that built civilization, because mirror neurons allow us to see another person or another being or another animal or whatever, and model the internal state, physical and emotional state of that being inside ourselves. So it allows us for us to feel empathy, and it allows us for us to learn by observing and copying.
And he's thinking that's all through our basic set of senses, that there's no non-local information.
It's through the basic senses, largely visual actually, but also other senses. You can also.
I'm gonna have to look into this. This is, it's interesting. A lot of the stuff that I've studied in terms of, energetic fields, kind of dovetail into this a bit, but I'm not sure that I've ever heard. This is a completely mechanistic system you're talking about, where you see
It's mechanistic, but it's biological.
Well, by mechanistic, is that you see, so you have a perception, and then your neurons mirror. There's a lot of filling in the blanks there in terms of your
mirror neurons mirror, as in if you see somebody make a movement, those same motor neurons are modeling that movement inside of you. Or if you see somebody experience a sensation like being tickled or pain, or if you see another guy get hit in the groin,
like yawning.
Like yawning, yes. Yawning is a perfect example. Yawning is also stimulated via the mirror neuron system.
I'm going to look into that. I've never come across that before. So thank you for teaching me something.
Yeah, I think it really, when I learned about that, it really helped open up my understanding of how a lot of things in Tai Chi function. But speaking of the things like the biomorphic resonance and the getting into the more transpersonal elements of these things, something that I want to be sure to ask while we're still in here is, um, are you familiar at all with integral theory, and is integral theory related to the integral and integral Tai Chi?
No, not so. There's no connection between Ken Wilber's work and Roger Yonka's work at all. You know, other than the idea of the word integral. Um, the ideas behind Roger's work are to democratize Tai Chi and Qigong, to take it out of the tradition system and make it something accessible to everybody. To take the hierarchy out of it, the patriarchy out of it, in that sense, making it more integral and accessible to people, more democratic. The forms are as good as any I've studied from traditional schools, in terms of their effectiveness. But that sense of work doesn't tie in with Ken Wilber's sense at all. And, integral theory, I gotta say, it's not something that I know much about, other than I once was engaged to a girl who studied it. That would be about it.
So how about your own work? You what what is it that how what's a good way for people to connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do, or learn from you?
Oh, to learn from me? Right now, I'm taking a COVID break. I'm not going to be one of these people who rushes out and tries to do everything online. So when COVID is subsiding a bit, maybe next summer, people can contact me through my website, which is Anthony Guilbert, GUILBERT.net. And you can reach me through that, and that'll usually have a list of everything that I'm doing. Most of what I'm working on now is mindfulness. Most of what Chi integration, perception. I'm really not approaching mind body arts from a wellness perspective. I think there's enough good people out there doing that. I don't need to be one more, and a lot of what I'm doing now is the promotion of mind, body, and wellness culture. It's one of the reasons why I put the book out that I just recently published. Notes from the Drift is literally a narrative on living mindfully. It's my perceptions and experiences living a mindful life. Putting all the things that I've studied into my everyday life, and exploring the experiences, that are produced from that. I think for me right now, being an advocate for these things is probably the best I can do, in terms of, there's so many good teachers. I would say there's so many excellent teachers right now. Other than the people who live in my local community, I'm not going to be running events where people are going to travel to see me. I write books that I hope inspire the community. And I'm going to be having a few other projects come out in the next 2 years that I'm not going to talk about right now because they're still in development. But again, those are to promote mind, body, and mindfulness culture.
Mm-hmm. So, are your books available through your website?
Yes, the ones that are still in print are available through the website. You can get them on Amazon as well, but if you go through the website, they're actually cheaper because the website connects you directly to the publisher, as opposed to if it matters, if $14 or $18 matters to you, go to the publisher and order it from them. Which you can get to through my website. If you don't care, then order it through Amazon at $18. But I think we also have a digital version for like $2.99. If you wanted to get it on your iPad, or no, that's not even an iPad. That's whatever Amazon is doing. Kindle, yeah, yep.
I think it's I love that you are doing this, and you're totally right that the qigong and mind body arts for wellness, for health wellness, are I mean, there's plenty of good work to be done, but there's lots of people doing that work. Whereas I'll just I think this is why qigong is such a great foundational mind body practice for virtually anyone, because it's balanced among the three regulations: body regulation, breath regulation, mind regulation, i.e., breath work, exercise, meditation. Um, and a lot of people want the benefits of meditation, but they have a hard time getting into it. They have a hard time sitting still,
Yeah.
maybe. Or or maybe people do develop a meditation practice, but they don't have any kind of a physical practice at all.
Yeah.
They become a fat, smiling Buddha after many years. When
Oh, yeah.
you can incorporate it all together, body, breath, and mind, so it doesn't have to be just a sitting practice. You can also have the benefits of moving the body, and in conjunction with that. And I love that you're taking that message to the mindfulness community to get the body involved.
Well, my rationale behind this is very simple. We spend most of our time moving. We are moving, thinking, we are dynamic creatures. Now, again, my original first practice was Zen. I sat Zen before I ever did anything else. But I have recognized over time that by accessing mindfulness through the body as an avenue, as opposed to sitting and just going internal through, working through the mind, by working through the body, you get to embody a form of mindfulness that is more easily accessible in day-to-day life. It is a lot easier. It's a lot easy for us to, having practiced, say 6-9 months of doing qigong, and all of a sudden you're in a stressful situation. You'll feel yourself. You'll root your feet. Your pelvis will shift a little bit. You'll center. You have actual experiences that you can draw upon that don't require you to go leave the room, sit down, take a couple of deep breaths, put yourself in a centered state. You can do it standing right there. You can do it in the middle of a crisis. I remember when my grandfather was dying, and I was at his bedside, and my feet were planted. My hips were centered, tailbone tucked under. I was breathing, and I just was holding his hand as he was passing, and I was perfectly in alignment and present. And I didn't have to leave, and I didn't have to do anything. It just was because I had trained myself to be in that state while standing. And let's face it, most of us spend most of our day moving. We're dynamic. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with sitting mindfulness. I mean, I studied Buddhism for going on 35 years. I just believe that this is, for our culture as it exists today, a better avenue for mindfulness. If you want to start moving mindfulness, and when you get to a certain level, sitting will be a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an either or. It's a both and. They beautifully complement each other. But the qigong is the ideal foundation to build to get started and take your mindfulness practice in any direction you want it. So I'm glad that you're doing this work. I'm glad that we're on the same team, helping to enable and inspire more people who want the benefits of these practices to have them for themselves, because it's not something we can give you. It's something you have to choose to take for yourself. We can hold the torch and light the way, but you have to swallow the pill yourself and actually do the practice. So I'm glad that we're on the same team working in support of that.
Me too. It's a pleasure meeting you and a pleasure being on your show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. I know we could go much deeper on a lot of these topics, but in the interest of keeping this bite-sized, we'll wrap up. I wanted to say though, I love your photo on your website, because I grew up being involved with the Unitarian Universalist Church, and your photo looks, you look like a UU minister.
I've heard that before. Not a UU minister, but I've heard that my appearance has something priestly about it, and I did think for a while about being a Zen priest, and yeah, the celibacy wasn't going to work for me. I'm sorry, just again, dynamic beings, But thank you very much. I've never had anyone say that about those particular photos, but wow, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here, Anthony, and I'll look forward to staying in touch.
Yes.
And thanks everybody for joining us. Everybody who's tuning in, watching this later, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Take care.